It's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's our goal. Hey, it's time for breaking bread with Papa. Hey, don't you know? Hey, it's also a show.
Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of Breaking Bread with Tom Papa. I am Tom Papa. Thank you so much for being here. We have an amazing show for you today. The incredible chef, Jonathan Waxman, is going to be on the program. He's the founder of Barbuto in New York and has a new cookbook with the Barbuto Cookbook, which is just released. And this is like the way you want, or the way I wanted Breaking Bread to go. What other podcast goes from amazing, hilarious comedians, insane people like Joey Diaz and Duncan Trussell, and then brings in a Jonathan Waxman to show you and share with you the real joys of amazing wine, amazing cooking, amazing restaurants, amazing culinary history. And the one crossover I would have to say is that I'm really trying to find the people that are good souls, people that you want to hear from, who are exciting, who you can just tell from their reputation out in the world are good people. And everybody who meets them always has something good to say. They've come with great stories and great history and great passion for all things that are comedic and all things that are cooking and celebrating our lives together. And this is a good one. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast. That's always helpful. Tell your friends about the podcast. Leave reviews that are positive for the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube as well. It all helps to keep us going and spread the word. And in what I hope is continues to be just a fun mission of celebrating all good things. So let's get started. Please welcome the very talented Jonathan Waxman. Well, thanks for doing this, Jonathan. This is very exciting.
I like the fact you got wine next to you.
Yeah, I know. I have I have a sponsor, Wine Access, and I just keep the bottles with me. And they're so nice. I had this last night.
Good for you.
Yeah, it was so nice. I also check this out. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see my painting up there?
Yeah.
It's the Bianco.
That's nice.
It's the Bianco.
I love Chris is my
the Napoli label.
I love Chris. I'm actually trying to get him to give me some of his products so I can label it for myself and just steal it. Why not? I mean, listen, if you're going to steal, you might as well steal from the best. Let's face it, right?
Yeah, I have so many questions because, well, first of all, thanks for doing this, because it's this whole show is about sitting down and breaking bread with people and learning about each other and becoming friends through that process. And I mean, that's your whole life. And your new book, the Barbuto Cookbook, is so good. I was went through it last night, read it, and it was one of those like weekday nights where you figure, I do most of the cooking for the family, and it's like, we'll just crank something out. And by the end of going through it, I was full on, wine bottles open, making my own croutons off of the sourdough, and a full rigatoni meal. It was on a Wednesday.
To me, when I grew up in Berkeley, California, and my parents, my mother was from Bed-Stuy and my father was in the Bronx, and they had that that New York sensibility about going out to eat, but also cooking at home. And when I started, I was a musician for a long time, and I transitioned to being a cook.
Right.
That those childhood memories just pop back in my head about my grandparents had a ranch. They had a chicken ranch with a vegetable farm up in Sonoma.
Wow.
My dad loved to cook. My mother was a really good cook. It really, that stuff really sticks with you. It's pretty amazing.
It's powerful. When I met my wife, she was a vegetarian, and I was like getting off meat for a little bit. So I was kind of vegetarian too when we first met. And she always tells this story how I duped her because she met this vegetarian guy. And then it took one walk into an Italian deli, and with all the provolone and this stuff hanging off the thing, and just the smell of it, my whole childhood just rushed back, and I left there with just meats under all arms. But to deny that, like to deny that would be to deny my whole life.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the bottom line, everybody has to understand that we're omnivores, and we're designed that way. We're designed to really survive by being able to eat almost anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's the remarkable thing about us. I mean, think about the first person that ate an artichoke. I mean, that's a crazy person, right?
Yeah.
Or I always think the first person that ate an oyster.
Yeah.
Or all those really crazy, weird things that we now just take for granted.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what cauliflowers used to look like, 100,000 years ago, but they probably were pretty weird looking. It's like a simple brain is down on the ground. So what do I do to how to make it? Oh, just throw it in the fire, throw everything in the fire.
Yeah. Let it go. So what was the cooking going on in your house? If both your parents were cooks?
Yeah, so it's funny, I just did a TV show with Guy Fieri, and it was a holiday, Jewish holiday, Hanukkah thing. It hasn't come out yet, but it will come out.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things we talked about was kugel, and everybody on the show freaked out about kugel. And I loved kugel growing up, and I realized that all the other kugels in the world must be terrible compared to my mother's.
Mm-hmm.
My mother made this kugel that was, I have to tell you, Tom, this is how she did it. And I'm interpolating because I don't have the real recipe card.
Uh-huh.
So she would cook egg noodles and cook them till they're all the way cooked, and then chill them. And then she would toss them with egg yolks, butter, sauteed onions, and olive oil, put it into a Pyrex pan and bake the hell out of it. Wow. So the outside was super crusty and the interior was creamy and delicious. I've never had, that was what I thought kugel was. Then people tell me they put cornflakes on top, and they put all kinds of crazy sugar and fruit. And I said, what? That's not kugel according to me. So I had a good upbringing,
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing, Tom. So Tom, when I was about 12, my dad goes, I want to cook. It was wintertime in Berkeley, and he said, I want to cook a steak. So he went to the market and he bought a big chuck steak. Those, we don't really have those anymore, but a big chuck steak. And he made a marinade. Who made marinades in 1962? Right. Anyway, so he got the blender and he put sherry and olive oil and onions and garlic. And he pureed up this marinade. I'm like, my eyes are this big. And he put it on the steak and he let it marinate in the refrigerator for 3 days. And then the fireplace in the living room, he built a brick sort of kind of a little place to rest. And he took an oven rack out of the oven, put it over the brick, built a fire, and he grilled that thing.
Jeez.
Honestly, to this day, I haven't tasted anything better in my life.
Oh my God. That is amazing.
Here's another crazy thing my mother did. My mother was in love with ethnic food, and she loved going to Mexico. They used to spend lots of time in Mexico. And one day she comes back, she had been to Tijuana, and she had this crazy wooden bowl and these Aztec and sort of salad utensils. Right. She says, we're gonna make Caesar salad. I got taught by this guy in Tijuana how to make it's called Caesar salad. And so she gets the recipe out, and it was the egg yolks and the Parmesan and the garlic and everything else. We're talking 1961. Yeah. And she chopped romaine lettuce up. I think romaine in those days was much better than it is now, by the way.
Oh,
and
really?
So that's kind of what I grew up on.
That's amazing. That is a totally different thing. I actually during the pandemic, I was listening to a story on maybe the Daily or something, and the woman was talking about all of her grandmother's recipes, and she thought, well, at this time, when we've got the time and we are all doing more cooking, I'm going to dive into those recipes, not realizing that her grandmother's recipes were like Campbell soup and some Ritz crackers. Like they were just feeding people. They just needed 3 meals a day. So it wasn't as thoughtful and like this, we all break it out and get it's a lot more in depth. For your parents to be doing that was ahead of their time.
But I will say my grandmother, who had a chicken farm in Sonoma, there's a whole community of these Jews that moved from New York to Sonoma in the late 40s. And they had a chicken farm. But he says, he used to laugh about people because I said, my grandmother killed chickens twice. Once when she slaughtered them, and the second time when she cooked it, because she was like the worst cook in the world. My grandmother was so bad. My mother's mother, but my father's mother,
Yeah.
who lived in New York, and I didn't really see very much of my life. We were, a coast apart.
Yeah.
Every time I ate her food, it was remarkable. Remarkable. I mean,
Yeah.
like things like brisket with kasha banishka. And, I fell in love with, buckwheat kernels and noodles. And
Oh
it
my
was
God.
done in a way that I taste it right. I can taste it right now.
Yeah, God,
You
it's
know?
amazing. I had the same thing. I had one grandmother that was horrible cook, and one who was like the classic Italian, like dialed in. But it's funny, even like from the grandmother that was the bad cook, she would serve me lunch, which was a horrible sandwich, like on white bread, but she would always put a pickle on the side. And I was like, and it was so meaningful that somebody was thinking enough to give me a pickle with my sandwich that she still gets credit.
Yeah, I think that Proustian style food memory is so important for everybody. I
Yeah.
think good, bad, or otherwise. I think bad memories actually are more interesting than the good ones in some ways, because it prevents you from pursuing
Right.
that avenue.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the menu at Barbuto and the cookbook that people can see in the cookbook, it it kind of has this Italian roots to it, but it's more than that. You definitely can tell even just from the beginning of our talking here is like there's a lot of different influences. If you're coming from like Brooklyn and the Bronx and Berkeley, and then we didn't even get to where you are educated in all this stuff beyond that, like you could tell there's like this, you've got this kind of a root, but it's unique in its expanse.
Thank you. I've been very lucky because I went, after I was a musician, I went to cooking school in Paris, and I was very lucky to do that. And being in Paris in the '70s was a remarkable place.
My God.
It was time when I knew that chefs were going to be important because the Perry Match, their big magazine. When I was in school there, I got a copy, and there was in front of the Eiffel Tower, there's Paul Bocuse getting this award from Valérie Giscard d'Estaing, and all these other chefs, his buddies, were behind him. And I realized there's something about this. Something's going to happen with chefs.
Right.
And it hadn't happened in America yet.
Interesting.
But I kind of knew that maybe something might happen like that.
Right.
A boom. I came back to America in the late '70s, and I started working in Napa Valley at Domaine Chandon, and I worked at Chez Panisse. I was very lucky in my career, but all of a sudden, a lot of Americans my age, younger, older, whatever, started doing what I did, going to cooking schools or going to working in restaurants and learning about food. And it really was the renaissance of food in America in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It was a huge food movement. And then of course TV just exponentially changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that was a big part of the whole puzzle.
Oh, for sure. I mean, then it just went to these heights that are just insane. But when you go back, I want to lead up to you coming back in that vein, meeting Alice. But when you decide that I'm going to go to school in Paris and learn how to cook, it's a pretty big shift from right.
Yeah.
You're like,
well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. I'll tell you a short story. So, I was a musician. I was a trombone player, and trombone players in the '70s. Listen, disco had happened. Trombones weren't necessary.
I had a friend who had the trombone when we were kids, like third grade, and that poor son of a bitch had to carry that to school every day.
And so my dad, who's this very funny guy, goes, son, it's time for you to get a real job. I said, what do you mean? So he said, he just writes a telephone number on a matchbook, hands it to me. So I call the guy up, I said, okay, what kind of sales job? Is it insurance? Is it shoes? He goes, no, it's a sales job. Just come see me. So I ended up at age 24 becoming a Ferrari salesman. I'm not kidding. And the guy who owned the Ferrari dealership's wife was a big foodie. We're talking 1974. And she's the one that got me to go to cooking school in San Francisco. And I went to cooking school in San Francisco. This wonderful woman at Tante Marie Cooking School Mary Risley, wonderful woman who's retired now. And she, unbeknownst to me, signed me up for a cooking course in Paris because she thought that I had some talent. And then she sort of cajoled me into finding the cash, $6,000, Tom.
Wow.
$6,000 for a year.
That's so great.
That was what it cost.
Jeez.
And so I got the $6,000 from my parents, and I went to cooking school in Paris. And Paris at that time was amazing on every level.
So
But
how old are you? You're like 25, 26?
I turned 26 the day I arrived in Paris.
Oh God.
And I remember the meal I had. I had a confit de canard and a bottle of Carreur wine, and I was off the races.
Oh my God. Forget
Isn't that
it.
great? Isn't that a crazy story?
Forget it. Forget
Yeah.
it. That's so insane.
Yeah,
I love the picture of you at 24, by the way, selling Ferraris to these rich guys.
So you'll love this. So I had hair down to here and a beard down to here. And the guy, the dealership goes, "You have to buy a pair of Gucci shoes." I said, "What?" They were $100. I didn't have $100. I had to go and borrow the $100 to buy those Gucci shoes. But luckily, I sold some Ferraris and made some money, so it's okay.
That's so great. Do you still love Ferraris? You were known for the blue Ferrari, right, in New York?
Yeah, I actually had two parts. I had a blue one and a red one. But I love artisanal stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And those days, even then, Ferraris were still made by hand.
Yeah.
And I think anything made by hand to me is amazing.
Yeah.
That's why I think my love of food sort of came about was, watching people do things by hand. I think that, that's the greatest expression of humanity, I think, to be creative. And, how you have your passion come out through from your brain into something that you create.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. There's nothing better when you meet somebody who's like really great at like one thing, like one little simple thing, like that they just are kick-ass at that, and the thoughtfulness and that those people, like the searching for it never stops.
Never stop.
You never perfect it.
No, I'm in love with watchmakers, and there's a watchmaker in Switzerland that works. Now he's got a bunch of people that look at him because he's getting old now, and he realizes he's the last of those artisanal, watchmakers.
Yeah,
he does everything by hand, but he has this glint in his eye, and he loves going to see what other people are doing. And if you watch videos of him walking around and looking at other manufacturers, all these big companies that have always billions of dollars to do stuff, and he's so intrigued by what they do. And he looks at it, and he just loves watching other people. He's not intimidated by it. He's fascinated by a different approach to what he does.
Amazing.
And that's why I think in my business, I'm so lucky because I have so many colleagues that do things so differently. I'm amazed by, you give 10 chefs exact 10 ingredients, you get 10 really different dishes.
Yeah, it's incredible. It is incredible. And you know what's incredible too? The success of Barbuto, where the cookbook comes from, when you tell the story of it, it's very similar to the stories I hear of somebody having a hit TV show, in that they were really good at what they were doing. They were making their way. They had some misses and but something happens where you get all the right people, the combination of all the people that are involved. In your case, the sommelier and Luis, the chef, and all these things, kind of like, there's luck there. Like there's another element to it. And it's very similar, like about a hit show. When you talk to like Seinfeld, he can talk all about the practical parts of it, but then there's like this unknown that kind of creeps in.
I think that you're so right. And, I often say that, that my world is a bubble. It's my little bubble. And within my bubble, everything else doesn't matter. That sort of time stands still outside my bubble, excuse me.
Yeah.
But in my bubble, I control things, but I can't do it alone.
Right.
Restaurants are not, everybody says, well, did Jonathan cook my dinner night? Well, I kind of did,
Yeah.
But, to be truthful, I have a lot of people that work for me that either have a little bit of my DNA, or they've learned from me and they've studied. But it's like that chicken. I was talking to somebody about the chicken.
Right.
And it's hard. It's like one of my greatest hits, right, Tom?
Yeah. The
And
JW.
everybody goes, do you get bored doing it? I said, absolutely not. Because number one, it's like Chubby Checker and the Twist. I don't mind here, watching Chubby Checker do the twist. He's probably doing it for 60 years now, but it doesn't matter. He knows it's important for his career. Chicken is important for my career, but I want all my people to understand that it's important.
Yeah.
So they have to respect where I came from.
Right.
And, and it's like Malcolm Gladwell says, you have to do something 10,000 times before you perfect it. That's a real hard thing to think about.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And I think, for cooks, a lot of cooks want to go to cooking school, put on an apron, and become the chef on TV.
Right.
Well, that's great. It's a good
Yeah.
it's a good aspiration, but
Yeah.
it's truthfulness that you have to do things a lot of times.
Yeah. What was the biggest thing that you came out of cooking school in two parts of it? Mentally, like the philosophy, but before that, the practical elements of what you learned.
I'll tell you, there's a real poignant story. So I had this wonderful guy named Ferdinand Chambret that worked at Prunier in the 30s, who was my instructor. And he was just the rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And one day we were making puff pastry. And puff pastry is a difficult thing to do. And it's sort of contrarian and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's one of those, it's almost like alchemy.
Yeah.
So I rolled it out and I did all this stuff and I baked it and it puffed up and I'm like, oh my God. He goes, good job, do it one time, try to do it 4,000 times. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
And then one day I was doing a class and Julia Child came into the school.
Oh, wow.
And she wanted to come by and see what the students are, because she had done it the same style, I think, back in the late 40s, early 50s.
Right.
And she was going through the school and she walked over and I was cutting something on the board. She goes, very nice knife skills, Jonathan. And I was like, okay, Julia Child. I said, I didn't have knife skills, but
I'm in.
Those kind of things stick with you. And, they're so great because, they become part of you. And then when you're doing things badly, and
yeah,
it happens all the time. You do things when you're tired or you're pissed off, or you're just off that day.
Yeah.
And you remember Julia Child saying, and those things are so important.
So important.
And then when I was a chef in East, this is a terrible story, but it's true. Alice Waters asked me to make an artichoke soup.
Uh-huh.
She gave me this recipe. It was she scoured old cookbooks, and it was a recipe from the Medici times in the 16th century.
Jeez.
And so I made a soup, and actually it was fantastic.
Wow.
So she comes in, she tastes it, she goes, really good. She says, well, let me see how much you have. And I showed her, and she goes, well, this is not going to last the whole night. This is only enough for 60 people. We do 120 people a night. I said, well, I did all the artichokes. She goes, no, you didn't. Did you do the ones? And she points to a shelf like way up high that she had stuck the artichokes up there. The other ones, I said, okay, Alice. And then, of course, I had to scramble. So, and that's cooking in a nutshell.
Yeah.
You have to be able to, number one, take criticism, right? However criticism comes about.
Sure.
And then you have to be able to spin on a dime and make it happen.
Right.
Because people are not going to wait for you. Because there's customers that come here to eat that artichoke soup. Yeah. They don't care that I didn't see the ones up on the shelf. And all that responsibility on your shoulders, it's heavy.
God, it's got to be. I mean, especially when you're trying to become great at something, and also, it's one thing. Like I love to cook, and I'm always learning, but you're doing one meal at a time, and you just got 3 or 4 people that are eating it. It's like, and you could ruin the night for sure, but there'll be another night. They can't go anywhere else. They have to come back. But to do it like with all those people that are like getting in their car and coming to your spot, that's a lot.
It's a big responsibility, I think, but I think that's what keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
That it always makes it fresh and always makes it different, and it always feels different every night, even though it's the same physical space.
Mhm.
But and that's I think I try to portray that in the Barbuto Cookbook, that all ingredients are different no matter what.
Yeah.
Even flour, which you take for granted,
Yeah.
measure it out each time, because you know what? It might be moister, it might be older, it
Yeah.
might be from a different manufacturer. Fish is always different. Let's just face that. But an
Yeah.
apple's not an apple's not an apple. So
Right.
you got to taste the apples to make sure that, a lot of people America cook with their eyes, and they don't
Yeah.
cook with their other senses. I think one of the senses we really don't use a lot are our ears.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, like sauteing. Like, no one knows what saute means, Tom. No one.
Right.
Saute in French means to jump. So when things are in a pan, you're cooking something that's sauteed, you want to literally see something pop up in the air a little bit. It's imperceptible. It's a 16th
Right.
inch. If it's not popping in the pan, it's not sauteing. Now, cooking in the pan
Interesting.
there's lots of gradations of cooking in a pan. You can cook slowly,
Right.
you could poach things, cook it in butter, cook it in olive oil. You could steam it. There's a myriad of ways of doing it, but
Yeah.
saute is a specific task.
Right.
And sauteing to me was one of the most difficult things to learn. I struggled with sauteing for a long time. So many things got stuck to the bottom of the pan, or
Yeah.
your pan got too hot. It wasn't hot enough.
It's
And in the middle
tricky.
of service, you're trying to do things perfectly, and you got to juggle 16 different things at the same time.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody helping you.
Right.
There's no one there to bail you out.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that's what people have to understand about what cooks do is so difficult, but it's so much fun too.
And you can hear the saute. Is that what
Like, you
where
can
you were
hear
going?
the saute in the pan. You can hear
Interesting.
it. You can hear the pop.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's weird. Like, I can cross the room. I can hear something on the stove.
Yeah.
Like when things come to a boil.
Right.
right?
Yep.
The
Oh,
lid
absolutely.
It starts cackling a little bit, the lid.
Yep.
Or, there's always all these different things that happen in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You're obviously, your nose is a huge part of cooking. Your
Yeah.
taste buds are a huge part of cooking. But to test the temperature of food, you could take a skewer and put it in a piece of meat in the oven. We have these little needles in the kitchen, and we stick it inside. We leave it 30 seconds, and we touch it to the bottom of our lip,
Right.
not the top of our lip, the bottom of the lip.
Uh-huh.
Why? Because that's the most sensitive part. But every parent that has a kid
Yeah.
knows about how much milk, what milk's supposed to be temperature before you give it to your kid.
Yeah.
So we all learn these things.
Yeah,
We just have to adapt them to cooking in a different way. And
Yeah.
that's to me is I love that stuff.
Oh, it's amazing. I literally, like I said, I read your book last night and then just went into the kitchen and started going to work. And I've been messing around with these sauces from Marcella Hazan, the Italian.
I love her.
So great.
I love
And when you talk about the sauteing, like the base of her tomato and vegetable sauce is onion. And then she says you put the carrot in, and then diced up carrot and celery just for about a minute, just until it's lively.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
Now, she has a much better way of describing it. Lively. That's better than
Isn't that great?
See, she and Giuliana Bugiali were my two sort of Italian cookbook mentors.
Oh,
Real
interesting.
life, I was very lucky. I had Mauro Vincente from this restaurant called Rex in LA,
Uh-huh.
who's long passed away. His cousin was a cinematographer for Fellini, and
Wow.
Piero Savaggio had Valentino.
Wow.
And those were my two LA Italian mentors.
Oh my God.
Imagine having those guys were fantastic.
Oh my God.
They were so I owe so much to them. Mauro was one of those guys who said, to drink espresso, Jonathan. I said, okay. He says the reason the cup is so thick, I never thought about this.
Yeah.
He says, because your tongue can take heat, but your lip can't. So you put the thick part to your tongue, to your lip, and you drink the espresso on. Italians
so simple.
They're amazing.
Amazing.
The culture that is so in love with everything about food and beverage.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. I spent a lot of time in Piedmont in Alba, and a lot of friends there. I stay with a guy named Pio Buffo and Pio Cesare Winery, And he introduces me to all his friends, and we get to go truffle hunting and all this stuff. But
Jeez.
what's amazing, we go to other restaurants with him, and people, open up their kitchens and their menus and stuff to us.
God.
It's such a treat for me.
Yeah.
You're seeing hundreds of years of culinary history, and you're learning it. And, I've been going to Alba now for a long time, and I
Yeah.
still feel like I'm just scratching the surface.
Oh, it's so crazy.
Crazy.
It's
I
so
want
crazy.
Remember this? It was a frito misto dinner, 24 courses, start to finish, from appetizer to dessert, all frito misto. Could
Oh
you
my
imagine
God.
that? And stuff like that is, it's so crazy. It's so much
insane.
fun. It is really great.
Oh, that's insane. That is so amazing. Here's a question. So, I'm reading her book. I've got your book. I bake a lot of sourdough bread. That was like that's when this started to I really started to sit with people and really want to meet people like yourself. And because I've been just doing it for years, and it just the same thing, the repetition of it. I can't get enough of it. I feel like I'm just starting and I can't get enough of it. And I'm just, plodding along, but just enjoying the hell out of it. And then I'll look at like your book, like with these recipes, the ingredients, it's to look at your chicken, the JW chicken in the book, and be like, okay, I'm going to go make this. And then I go into my supermarket, and I always feel like you're just up against it. Like the ingredients.
No, and Tom, can I just be truthful with you? When I started cooking 45 years ago, supermarkets were pathetic.
Right.
They were honestly pathetic.
Yeah.
Your local butcher was amazing. Your local fishmonger, your local little grocery. There's a place called Monterey Market in Berkeley where I grew up. Still there. It's the greatest produce market in America.
Right.
And you can get great stuff there. But now supermarkets are fantastic.
Right.
They're amazing. They really are.
The amount of stuff they're importing.
Whole Foods, but Gelson's and all those different things in LA. You've got endless. The farmers markets are tremendous.
Yeah.
You're so lucky. The Santa Monica Farmers Market, it should get a Nobel Prize. But so you go get a chicken, and number one, the first thing you do is that you try to spend the most money for a chicken. That's that to me is sort of a litmus test. Secondarily, you look at the chicken; does it look healthy?
Right.
And then you eyeball them, and then a chicken, if it's too big, if it's too small, like 3.5 to 4 pounds kind of is the perfect size.
Right.
3 3/4 ideal.
Right.
So you get a chicken, and here's the deal. Last night was my 25th anniversary, and my wife and I went to John George for lunch. We had a wonderful lunch, but then I wanted to cook for the kids because everybody's home last night. So I just roasted a plain Bell and Evans chicken from Whole Foods.
Oh, nice.
And so what I did is I took it out of the plastic bag. I rinsed it off quickly and dried it. And this is all I did, Tom. I let it sit for a half an hour.
Right.
Literally. At room temperature. Put the oven, my little toaster oven. I'm talking about a little toaster oven. A little Breville toaster oven. And I put it to 450 degrees. And this is the big part of the puzzle.
Right.
Now, in my book, what I want you to do is cut the chicken in half to make it easier to cook. And it gets crisper this way. But for a simple roast chicken, at home when you got a busy day, you got family, all this stuff to do. Take that roast chicken, you get a heavy casserole. Heavy. I mean, I'm an earthenware casserole, but it's got an enamel to it or metal.
Right.
Earthenware, and you just scooch it with olive oil. Coat it well with olive oil. Throw the chicken in on its back. Do the backstroke, and then put the chicken in there and spritz it with olive oil as much as you can. And then salt and pepper on top, fresh sea salt, fresh black pepper. Make sure you coat it nicely. And then you shake the roasting pan, shake it. You want to make sure it's moving, that there's enough oil there. And just put it in the oven and you wait 15 minutes, go do whatever you want to do. Don't look at it. Don't forget about it. And then you come back and then you take it out of the oven and you shake it to make sure it's not stuck. Okay?
Okay.
Shake it. If it gets stuck, you can get a little spatula and loosen it up. But shake it, and then you tilt it and take a spoon, and all that olive oil and chicken schmaltz comes out of it, and you kind of just sprinkle on top of the chicken, put it back in, and go away for 10 minutes. And repeat that 4 more times.
Right.
You'll be shocked how perfect you'll have the best chicken in the planet.
Oh, really?
And it's that easy.
So simple.
It was and cooking really is that simple.
Yeah.
You break it down, it's that simple. And that's what the Barbuto Cookbook is trying to sort of portray, is things aren't that hard to do. You know, some things are a little laborious. I'm sorry, to make a bolognese sauce, you can't do it in 2 seconds.
Sure.
It takes time.
Yeah.
But carbonara, you dice up the guanciale, you cook a little bit of olive oil, you break open 2 egg yolks into a little bowl, you grate some cheese, you put the pasta, you put the guanciale pan aside so it does not burn anymore. The pasta gets cooked. You take a little pasta water, you put it in with the guanciale, heat the pan up with that water, and then you add the egg yolks, whip them in, and then add the pasta, little cheese, boom, you're done.
Done.
That's it. That's it.
I know, it's amazing.
You know what? And that's what hopefully I say this in the book the right way. And if I don't, people lambaste me and tell me how I did it wrong. But I want people to take those restaurant style dishes.
Yeah.
You know, and be able to cook them for your family.
Right.
And not sweat over them. Enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. I know. The first time you go through, there's like this painstaking, you don't want to screw it up, but you do have to let go. You have to.
And listen, if you screw it up, who cares? You dump it out and you order pizza. You know, or you pull pizza out of the freezer. Who cares? I watched my daughter, who's went to Princeton, perfectionist daughter.
Right.
Yes, like last night she cooked a cake for us for our anniversary, and she says, "Daddy, part of a cake." I said, "Let's taste it." It was the most delicious cake I've ever eaten in my life. I'm not kidding.
The best.
But she's still mad because part of it fell a little bit. And you know, I think people are very perfectionistic about things like that.
Sure.
That's great, but have a glass of wine first before you cook.
I was going to ask you that question actually, because
if you don't drink and cook, something's wrong with you.
Right.
That's fine too. You drink tea, that's another beverage.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Jim Harrison?
I was such a big Jim Harrison fan.
Me too.
You know, that's a person that understood food.
Oh yeah.
Food culture.
Oh, completely.
Such an amazing writer, but he also understood simplicity, and he understood that cooking for oneself could be amazing.
Exactly.
I love that about him. I thought that was really pretty cool.
So great. But he does say that he would always save the drinking he couldn't drink and start cooking. He had to wait till he had a handle on it, and then he would start his drinking.
Well, you know, it's funny. I'm of 2 minds. If it's a big elaborate dinner, and I might not drink at the beginning.
Yeah.
But I always find myself, when I keep going to the refrigerator too many times, there's a bottle of Parasol Rosé in there. It starts talking to me. I gotta open it up. It's good. You know?
What's your favorite wine?
You know, that's the hardest question in the world. Somebody asked me about my favorite white wine, and I said, I'm gonna tell you what I said to them, and then I immediately regretted what I said because there's so many other ones. I said Chablis. Wonderful Chablis like Daviso, Ravino are some of the greatest. You know, even lesser ones like Michel and things like that. It's the greatest expression of Chardonnay in the world.
Right.
But there's so many other great white wines out there. And then you start talking about red wines. You know, I always say, you know, and then I say, well, maybe there's a Chateauneuf-du-Pape white that I really think is really special. And then all of a sudden I realize it's what my mood is and what I'm eating and what time of year it is. And if I'm in a good mood, I'm in a bad mood, if I feel cheap tonight or I feel expensive, you know, like for instance, red wine. I've rediscovered Beaujolais. Beaujolais again.
Really?
You know? But Sagretino might be my favorite red wine to ever drink.
Which one?
Sagretino. Paolo Bello. It's from Umbria. Paolo Bello might be one of the greatest winemakers to ever live.
Wow.
And those wines are, now I'll get in trouble because I always say that I love Barolo from Alba as well,
Yeah.
but an old Burgundy from, a great producer. Then I started really screwing myself up. And then I said, from California, then I really like, Zinfandels from certain producers. And I love Cabernets that have just been matured to the right degree. So
Yeah. Are there any wines you
then
haven't mentioned?
then I go, okay, a Magnum of Chateau Margaux from 1955, done.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it's too your memories. Like if you have visited a place or if somebody shared it with you or if you know the story with it, it's just like that gives more meaning to it. It like
100%. You're so right. I'm actually starting a podcast with Marcus Samuelson, and we're gonna delve into that from a cook's point of view.
Wow.
We get into that subject.
That would be great.
What's your inspiration? What are the passions? Where do all these things for your restaurant come from?
Yeah.
But as you go along, how does it evolve?
Right.
What are your influences? How do people? What happens with it? And I think that's the fascination to me about any, like what you do is it's so hard. I'd love to ask you a million questions about how you get to the point where you're comfortable with doing what you do.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's so difficult. It's like a shoemaker. Like I always like, how do you make a shoe?
Right. Yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. I got my hair cut yesterday. My guy's been cutting my hair forever. He's a real genius in hair cutting hair. He goes, "Who the hell cut your hair last time?" Because it was COVID. I couldn't go to him. And he was angry because somebody cut my hair the wrong way. No, but that's cool, right?
That's the best. That is the best. Here's something in that vein. In your book, you talk, surprisingly to me, I don't know if it's surprising to other people, but you really talk about how important soup is, that you can really judge a place by the soup. And that I always thought of soup as something extra, something thrown in, something you just, but you were like, no, that kind of really shows the heart and soul of the place and the people creating it.
So I'll tell you a story. So when I was wooing my wife, who's much younger than I am, in LA, we had a date, and she calls me up and says, "I can't make the date. I don't feel well. I really am sick." I said, "You know what? Why don't I come over and I'll cook you dinner?" So, and she really had the flu. She wasn't feeling well.
Yeah.
So I got a whole chicken, and I got a bunch of root vegetables from Gelson's actually. And I got ginger and carrots and rutabaga and turnips and onions and everything else, whatever else. And I made a little fast chicken stock for the neck and all the little bits and pieces inside of chicken. And I trussed the chicken up and I poached it in this chicken stock with the vegetables for about an hour and a half. And that's what I served her for dinner.
And now you're married 25 years later.
So that soup sealed the deal.
That's amazing. Well, talk about memories. Talk about your growing up. I mean, if somebody fed you chicken soup when you were a kid, forget it.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm doing a project now with a company, and one of the things that I put on the menu was chicken soup. And they said, and all the chefs are going, yeah, it's like boring today. I said, no.
Yeah.
Perfect chicken soup is everything.
Yeah.
It's Jewish penicillin,
Yeah.
And, when the carrots have to be cooked perfectly, the peas have to be cooked. I put corn because I'm from California. The chicken has to be diced the right way. But the most important thing on the noodles, you can't put crappy noodles in chicken soup. They have to be beautiful and perfect, and you got to be able to slurp them.
Right. They got to be slurpable. Yeah. And your mussels, like the one picture, this beautiful artwork in the book too, that one picture of the mussels. And like I grew up in New Jersey, and we'd be down at the Jersey Shore. And my father always was making mussels marinara and mussels. So lucky. As soon as I saw that, I was like, oh, I've got to make that one.
It's funny. When I grew up in California, there were mussels everywhere, but we never ate them. It wasn't until I started working in restaurants and I actually went to Paris and started, mussels from Brittany. I'm sorry. Might be the greatest thing in the world, except there's these mussels from Washington State and from Nova Scotia that
Oh yeah.
parallel with those. I mean,
I've
but
had the Nova
I,
Scotia ones.
but I didn't grow up with that style of cooking. Cooking seafood in red sauce, which you do in the East Coast.
Yeah, yeah.
I grew up more of a Genovese style in San Francisco, and Genovese is really Northern Italian cooking. And when I first got to New York and started going to restaurants that cook things to me, I just loved it. It was so.
Is that more lemon butter?
Yeah,
Garlic?
more lemon butter. Butter was a big part of a lot
Yeah.
less emphasis on canned tomatoes, but fresh tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Pesto was the king. That's
Uh,
the king. And there's a great Ligurian dish, which is you take tomatoes, Jersey tomatoes in the season,
yeah.
cut them in half, season them with salt and pepper and a little garlic and olive oil, blast the crap out of them until they're just almost wilted, but holding their shape.
Uh-huh.
Then you take pesto and you take those tomatoes and you mix them together
With pesto.
with pesto, and that's the sauce. And then you put
Ah.
green beans and fingerling potatoes, toss all that together, and then you use this pasta called trophier. It's a pasta. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
No.
It's about that long and it's twisted,
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. A little thick.
and it holds the sauce like no one's business.
Oh my God, that sounds so good. I've been on this.
That's what
Oh God, this is good. I'm gonna be cooking again tonight. Oh my God. We have a mutual friend, Anthony Giglio.
Oh, Anthony's the best.
I said to he was a really good friend of my cousin's, and we would hang in New York like in the 90s a little bit, and then lost touch with him every once in a while, like Facebook. We would just, and I was reading your book, and you mentioned him and his mother, his Sicilian mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Because I've been on this. This is like kismet, because I'm on this tomato experimental hunt. That's why I've got the Bianco tomatoes. I'm using Cento. I'm trying to figure out what's the difference between like the whole tomatoes and the crushed tomatoes. I'm just trying to dial in my knowledge of tomatoes. And then Anthony's mother-in-law is.
Oh, she's a genius.
Genius.
So one day, out of the blue, Anthony comes by the restaurant, and he leaves me a package. What it is? It's his mother-in-law's canned, jarred tomatoes, both whole and chopped.
Uh-huh.
Now I got so mad at my wife because I took it home, and I was saving it, and I come home and I said, "Where's the jarred tomato?" She goes, "Oh, I made pasta today for lunch." I said, "What about me?"
Luckily, tomatoes.
Luckily, she saved the whole tomato, so I was able to taste it. They had a concentration to them that no more jarring tomatoes is a real art, but picking them from the market at the right time is a real art.
Right.
But growing them and then cooking them and then jarring them, that's the ultimate thing to do.
Yeah.
And evidently she does bushels of them at harvest time. So listen, you're lucky in California because you're going to get the best tomatoes in the world. I'm sorry, you just are. You
in California.
Yeah, California tomatoes. There's something about the climate. When Italians came to California in the 19th century, they go, "This is home," because it looks so much like the coastline along the Mediterranean.
Right.
You think about it, and a lot of the things in California. California has we had wild fennel. We've got wild onions. We've got artichokes grow really well. Some of the best broccoli rabe in the world grows in California. So
right.
for Italians, it was paradise because all the things that they were used to at home, they brought cuttings with them. They brought seeds with them. They brought, all those they brought. Those guys from like Mondavi's ancestors brought grapes with them so they could grape seeds so they could plant new vines. And that's why we had all those Italian varietals in Napa Valley and Sonoma. That's why when I was a kid, there was this restaurant, it's a style of restaurant you go to in Sonoma, where you go in and the first thing you'd have a bowl of Barbuto. And everybody got it. And that was how you started the meal.
Right.
And a 6-course meal with, salumi and the pickles and the cheese and the breadsticks and the focaccia, and then you go into your first course, which was some kind of warm salad with stuff, and then you had the primi with the 3 kinds of pasta, and then they bring out the lasagna, and then
The meat.
then you have a little drop of sorbet to clear your palate, and then
Yeah.
you go into the main course, and they bring out these roasts and roast.
It's so
Forget it.
crazy.
But that was what the
But that's
Italian style restaurant was in when I was a kid up in Napa and Sonoma. And in San
right.
Francisco, the other Italian style restaurant was these Joe's restaurants. I don't know if you
Right.
remember them. And you go and sit at the
Like-
counter, and a guy would take your order, and then he'd cook your food right in front of you.
Oh wow.
And the thing I remember, there's a little place, Little Joe's on Columbus in San Francisco, and you go sit at the counter. I remember seeing the olive oil cans, the gallon olive oil cans,
Yeah.
and they were squeezed by hand, and they had a dent in them where the guy would hold them and dump them out.
The coolest.
Those kind of things are, I mean,
That's
there's a restaurant
amazing.
called Vanessi's that was on Broadway that Al Suarez and I used to go to. It's long gone now, sadly.
Yeah.
And you go there, and the guy would take your order, and he'd grill your lamb chops and cook your pasta carbonara. And
Oh God, the best. Yeah, I never really connected the California and Italian thing. Of course, I mean it's the same climate in a lot of ways. You've got the
Yeah,
sea, you've got the
100%.
mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my sister runs a nonprofit in New Jersey where she's converting. It's called City Green, and she's converting all of these abandoned farms and bringing them back to life and growing food for the
Good.
inner cities in like Patterson and Passaic and all these kind of places. And my nephew's working; he's the head farmer there, and he brought a huge thing of tomatoes down to the beach. And we were like the old country. We took the tomatoes, we had a big pot, we blanched them all, we canned them at the end. It was like a 12-hour process, but it really was. I haven't even tasted them yet, but the process was so satisfying.
Yeah, it's amazing. When I was a kid, smelling a tomato that you freshly picked
Oh,
and the dust on it,
yeah.
it's hard to describe.
It's hard to
It's
describe.
really hard to. So,
But that's the
I
thing, like when
remember-
you talk about the supermarkets, I mean, they're like, you say like Americans cook with their eyes. Like you walk in and you like see these things that look beautiful, but when then you smell them or taste them, you
Yeah.
know, they're not that thing like you get from your garden.
No, but it's tricky. Well, I think grocers are the unsung heroes of life because I don't see how they can possibly operate with so many SKUs on.
Oh
on
God.
every-
Yeah, for sure.
So I have to hand it to them. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
but-
I guess I only say because I get confused because I
No,
go in.
It is confusing. And
Right.
you bring up some of the most important thing about chefs and what discern good chefs from great chefs
Mhm.
is editing. How you walk into a supermarket and you pick things and you try not to get too many things.
Uh-huh.
That was kind of
Yeah.
the ethic of Top Chef when I was on Top Chef, is how to limit yourself and not try to cook the kitchen sink.
Right.
Choose exactly the right ingredients to make the right, and don't let your brain go too far down that road of perdition and try to add things in that are going
Right.
to mess you up. And that's
That's
what
so
happens.
smart.
Sometimes it's just about a tomato, garlic, olive oil, and
Yeah.
you're done.
Right. Even though
Sometimes
you're
you go the full Monty and you go like, I want to do everything.
Right.
So it really. I think cooking is such a lifetime affair.
right. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But I mean, it's amazing how when you were describing making the chicken, when I hear people describing like making the best steak, it all is the same thing. It comes down to salt and pepper and the meat. Where all the people that are really passionate about it, it's get good quality, whatever it is. Here's my one question.
Sure.
That's in your book. There's a lot of different ways to do cacio e pepe.
Right.
And I've been messing with that for like the last 2 years. And there's a lot of different ways of doing it. The way that I've been doing it is you have the pan, and this is like a grown-up mac and cheese, basically, for those who don't know. And you take the pan and you put it out, and you put the crushed pepper in it with butter, and you
Right.
get that going. And then you add the cheese to it and a little pasta water, and you get that going in the separate pan. And then eventually you start bringing the pasta in and mixing it and getting down into that place where it's coated but not too clumpy and all the rest of it. But in your book, you basically take a bowl with all those ingredients, take the pasta, put it in there, and just mix it up.
So Mauro Vincente taught me how to make cacio e pepe, because that's, if you learn how to make cacio e pepe, you're an unofficial Roman.
Right.
Because that's the litmus test.
Right.
So he said it's all about the pasta being cooked right.
Got
It's
it.
all about how much pepper and how much cheese.
Right.
So what he said, you have to, everything has to be ready to go. You have to crack the pepper. Don't wait till the last moment because you'll screw up the pasta.
Uh-huh.
You have to have the cheese right there, the butter, the pepper, and the pasta water. So you're thinking about, you got like 5 different items that all have to go together. So if you have different things, what's going to happen? The pasta will cool down too much.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
The
Yeah.
pasta will cool down too much, and you're making life too difficult for yourself because you got your peripheral vision is going to get you start getting anxiety because you don't know what's going on already. So you put everything, and I do like things very simple.
Yeah.
I'm too dumb to like get complexity. But you're talking about those 5 ingredients.
Right.
You know, pasta water, black pepper, butter, pecorino.
Right.
5 ingredients. How do you merge them together in the best way possible? And I think the way I describe in the book gets you the right thing, and heating the bowl up first. So if you heat the bowl up, so what I like doing is I like putting a little boiling water in the bowl and let it sit. So when you cook your pasta, and you have little ramekins of everything, right? You have your butter in a ramekin, you got your cheese in a ramekin, your pepper in a ramekin. You cook your pasta. You have a ladle for the pasta water, which is super important, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But your bowl is full of hot water that you can serve it in, and you gotta make sure people at the table too. And they're not messing around with the TV or with some other,
the worst. Yelling for my daughter to come up, and 10 minutes later.
Anyway, so when the Italians say pasta waits for no man. So you dump as soon as you know you pull the pasta out and it's just about there, you dump the water out of the bowl, you dump all the ingredients in, you add your pasta water, then you pasta and toss all together. And guess what happens? It becomes homogeneous. Then everything blends together perfectly.
Right.
And you control your environment.
So much more simple. The way I was doing it was like this obstacle course. Yeah,
exactly. And I like solving problems like that. I think that's, to me, I'm pretty good at that stuff.
Yeah.
I watch cooks sometimes, get muddled up, I think, with all that stuff. And I think I want people to have fun cooking. I don't want it to be a chore.
Right. Exactly.
Chore, no one wants to do it.
Yeah, no, I know.
It's like when I was a musician, playing scales was a damn chore. And so one person taught me how to make fun with it.
Yeah.
Make them, don't just play scales, play them fast, play them staccato, play them up an octave, don't, mix it up.
Right. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Have a good time with it. Have that glass of Albarino.
Yeah, right. Exactly. In the beginning of it all. Well, the book is so great. Congratulations on it. It's a nice thing. Now, before you go, everybody's got to get the book. It's just it's filled with so much great stuff. And it's just a great read too. I mean, just to see the history, you with Alice Waters, and my friend Anthony, by the way, who did not know he was in the book until I told him.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was very excited to hear it. But so what's the deal in New York? What's up with the restaurant? How are you feeling? This is probably
that's a whole podcast.
Yeah, of course.
I'll make it sort of short and sweet.
Okay.
We're trying to get Barbuto back open.
Okay.
My biggest concern with my employees and safety.
Sure.
I have to think about how I'm going to, deal with all that.
Yeah.
I think there's a consumer confidence issue with everybody in America, and I can't blame anybody.
No.
we don't have we don't have leadership that has good answers. I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
No, it's the truth.
And
We're confused.
so somebody said to me, one of my fellow restaurateurs, she goes, Jonathan, they should just make mask wearing a law and stop it already.
So simple.
No, that's a simple thing, because COVID's not going to go away. So I'm hoping that we can open and do it the right way.
Yeah,
And
that'd be great.
it would be I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah, I could imagine. I know it's the same as me. It's like our whole lives.
I hate myself. I don't want to see myself anymore.
I know.
I see too much of myself.
I know.
So I have a lot of people that I think, now the cookbook's out, I think people they're on Barbuto's on the radar again. So,
Yeah, it's great. It's a nice little thing. Like, I'm in the same boat, with live performing, and we're all doing these other little things, and
but you miss it, don't you?
What's that?
You miss it.
Oh, immensely.
It's your soul, right?
100%. It's like, I didn't take more than a week off until March for 20 years.
Yeah.
Crazy,
right?
Crazy. So these things, and I think the cookbook is kind of like that. It's a little reminder that we're going to get through this and get out of it, and we'll be going full bore as soon as we're able to.
I think human beings are, number one, adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
That time does cure all ills.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of smart people out there, Tom. There's a lot of smart people. And if we listen to smart people and we follow their direction, the smart people are very calm.
They're right.
They're not freaking out.
That's a great point.
Not freaking out. Why should we?
That's a great point. Great point. Well, look, I got to say, this is so amazing. And I'm going to find you, and I'm going to sit down, and we're going to drink a real bottle of wine together and continue the conversation. All right, Jonathan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care of yourself.